The 2015 nuclear deal struck between Iran and the world's 5 major powers, headlined by the United States, was Barack Obama's signature foreign policy achievement. President Donald Trump has been trying to tear it down ever since he started campaigning for president, and obviously what we've seen today is that he's pushing this issue to Congress, but essentially he's saying at the White House that they want the deal to end. Joining me from Austin is Dr. George Friedman. Dr. Friedman, thanks so much for joining me. I want your input on this. What's happening with this agreement? Is it in, serious consideration of being completely done away with by the United States?
President Trump's claim is that the Iranians are violating the agreement. Essentially, what he's saying is that they are proceeding in some way to create a nuclear weapon and a delivery system. If we break the agreement, they will continue to do the same thing. So the problem is that the agreement itself, if Trump is right, has not achieved its goal. If Trump is wrong, it may trigger them to proceed to build one. But there's every evidence that they're building missiles. There's every evidence that the Iranians will proceed as they want. So it's very hard to see that it's going to change Iran's behavior, whatever it is. I don't think the Iranians will proceed with a nuclear program just because this treaty goes down. I don't think they're going to stop working on one just because the treaty stays up. The treaty has been overblown in importance, both by its proponents who wanted to pretend that they'd achieved a major thing, and by its critics, like Trump, who believed that they had done great harm. So when you look at the treaty, you assume this is what's controlling Iran. What's controlling Iran is Iran's perception of its own interest. It's watching the Korean situation carefully, and right now it would not like to be Korea. So it's quite content not pushing the envelope.
Interesting. Okay, so first of all, let's just clarify some of the details here. Were missiles, specifically ICBMs, were they part of this agreement, or was this strictly a nuclear deal?
Well, that's one of the questions. The agreement wasn't that well drawn, that clearly drawn. Can there be these missiles without a nuclear intent? Yes. Do they have a nuclear intent? Maybe. And this was the problem with the agreement. The Iranians bargained well. They kept the missiles in some way in the deal. The Americans wanted a deal. The Europeans wanted a deal. They got a deal. They left something ambiguous. And now Trump, with some legitimacy, is claiming that the Iranians are violating a poorly drawn deal. On the side of the proponents, there is a sense that this was a superb deal, well crafted, worked on for many years, and that breaking it would create a major problem. Well, it may well create a major problem, but the problem was that, like all treaties, it was a set of compromises, and many of those compromises aren't as clear as you'd want them to be. So the Iranians can make a good case that they're not breaking it. We can make an excellent case that they are breaking it. Sort of, it's not the point. The point is it effective in stopping the Iranians from proceeding with their nuclear program? And I've always been of the opinion that as an agreement, it really doesn't have that much influence. Of course, the sanctions hurt the Iranians, but I don't think the sanctions by themselves were what caused Iran to decide to abandon the program. I think they decided it was just too dangerous to proceed.
Okay, so then what is the president's game in all this? What is he trying to accomplish?
Well, he's trying to accomplish two things. One is what he says. The U.S. thought they had a deal on this with the Iranians. The ambiguity of the language notwithstanding, he expects the Iranians to follow it. They're not following it. He's not going to pretend that they're following it. The second level is political. He has not shown a great deal of strength in Korea. Korea is a very complex problem. War is a very dangerous thing to contemplate. And he has been very cautious. He has a base that is fairly aggressive on these questions. They're also America firsters, let's not get involved, so it's a complicated issue. And he wants to demonstrate that he has the will to engage the Iranians. The third thing is, this is an interesting signal to the North Koreans. The U.S. has made many threats, has deployed forces, but it hasn't struck. By doing this with the Iranians, they send a signal, however weak it is, to the North Koreans. We really are serious about nuclear proliferation to countries we don't trust. We sure don't trust you, North Korea. We also don't trust Iran. We will proceed. It's not the strongest signal, but it kind of makes sense in this context. So in breaking this agreement, he isn't risking that much. He gained some political points, and it's possible that he may get the Iranians to stop the missile program that he's concerned about.
Okay, so there's the nuclear deal, and then there's the other issue, and that's the facts on the ground in the Middle East and what's been happening in Iraq, and the fact that I've obviously seen reports, and I know you have as well, that to a certain extent the United States Air Force was acting as Iran's surrogate Air Force with what's happened in Mosul and some of the other battles that have been going on in Iraq. How does this, whether they break the deal or not, how does this play into what's happening in Iraq and in the region in general?
I liken this to the way oil companies work around the world. Sometimes they compete, sometimes they cooperate. It's coopetition. Sometimes we work with the Iranians where we have a common interest, such as stopping ISIS, and they do have a major interest in stopping the Sunni group. Sometimes we're opposed. And that makes it all much more complicated. We don't have the military power on the ground by ourselves to manage the Iraqi forces and support them in their fight against ISIS. We don't have enough. The Iranians have been a major factor in stiffening the Iraqi army, getting them to fight ISIS. And our Air Force has obviously collaborated with the Iraqi forces on the ground, many of which are commanded or at least advised heavily by Iranians. So in Iraq, we have a common interest with Iran. On the question of nuclear weapons, we don't have a common interest. And this makes it different from Korea. In Iran, we have some common interests, and we're having this debate at the same time that we're collaborating. We don't have any collaboration, really, with the North Koreans. They are a problem, pure and simple. Now, will the Iranians stop their operations in Iraq against ISIS if we break this treaty? Absolutely not. The future of Iraq is fundamental to Iran's interests, and the future of their presence in Iraq is the key to that. They're not going to change their cooperation with us. Will they start a nuclear program because they broke this? No, they'll start a nuclear program with or without this treaty. Is this treaty going to strain U.S.-Iranian relations? I don't know what straining relations means. Will they be angry at us for doing this? Yes. Will they change their behavior in areas that are important to us? Probably not. Will angry notes be shared? Of course. So this is an issue that has some value, but it is of interest to the United States, to the Trump administration, to make it a decisive issue. It isn't for the most part. And therefore, what I would argue is that however this ends, and remember, Congress is going to get involved, and this president has had a lot of problems getting things through Congress or with Congress's cooperation. This is far from a decision by Donald Trump. It's a much broader decision in the United States. But however this ends, the basic geopolitical structure of the region will remain the same.
Well, we will be watching to see what happens. Dr. Friedman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.